Welcome aboard the USS Aeronome. To become a member of our crew, please visit perfectorganism.com/support. As a patron of Perfect Organism, you'll receive exclusive perks and early access to content. Incoming audio transmission received. Please proceed to Subdeck 3 to begin playback. Thank you, and welcome aboard.
All right, sweethearts, what are you waiting for? Breakfast in bed? Another glorious day in the Corps. Day in the Marine Corps is like a day on the farm. Every meal's a banquet. Every paycheck a fortune. Every formation a parade. I love the Corps.
Where's Basket? Let's rock!
Welcome to Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast. I am your host, Jaime Prater, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Patrick Green, Christian Matska,
Andie,
Perry Chicos.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the show. It's been a while since we recorded a roundtable. It's great to have everyone back and to be back. Tonight, we are here to discuss our last, and at least for this year, our 35th anniversary celebration of Aliens, and we really wanted to kind of leave off with the discussion of the special edition. And I know we have a lot of opinions. There's a lot in the special editions that is not in the theatrical. There are those of us who prefer the theatrical. There are those of us who prefer the special edition. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into what those scenes are. Does it make it a better film? The additional scenes and because there's some stuff in the special edition that made it, public years ago. Like, for instance, Ripley's name, Ellen. No one knew that until the special edition release, and everyone calls her Ellen Ripley, even people who have never even seen the special edition. So anyways, there's a lot to get into tonight. I'm excited. It's going to be a great time. So
you're really talking this one up, Jamie. It's a lot of promises. No, it is going to be a great time. Before we go any further, though, there's an elephant in the room. And that elephant is about 9 pounds and is no longer on camera, but it was Perry's beautiful daughter.
Yes.
Who was here for the beginning of this. Perry,
not an elephant.
Yeah,
Good
I'm
job,
sorry. I'm not
Patrick.
trying to call her an elephant.
Oh, okay. Little elephant in the room. Perry's
She's
baby.
A very dainty baby who's not elephantine at all. But Perry, from all of us here, on the call, all the rest of the team, everybody else out there in Perfect Organism, Alien Land, congratulations to you and your wife on the birth of your lovely daughter.
Thank you. Thank you so much, you guys. It seriously means so much. And everyone should know we named her Quinn Ripley Chicos. My wife let me have the middle name, which I'm so grateful for. And I just love telling people when they ask me like what that name is from. And I always, bring up Alien and say how such a great, strong character within these films. And I wanted my daughter to, be a symbol of that in a sense. And obviously I'm going to share we've already watched Aliens twice together, as I've told you guys, but I want to share the love of fandom with her as much as I love it. And hopefully she will appreciate it since her name has Ripley, But thank you.
It's her birthright,
Yes, exactly.
I hope that if you walk her down the aisle someday, you give her a flamethrower as just to make it really appropriate.
My question before we get into the show, though, how old were your kids, all of you guys, when you first showed them Aliens? Obviously, Quinn is an infant and newborn, so I'm curious the rest of you.
2 weeks, yeah.
My youngest was 9, but my oldest, we waited till he was 10. But Andie, yours were younger, weren't they?
Well, my youngest was 8. She begged to watch it. And then my oldest just saw it last year when she was 12. She waited. And then afterward, she was kind of sad. So I was devastated. I'm like, oh my God, she doesn't like it. And then she said, no, I'm just sad that I waited so long. So that's where it went wrong. Yeah. But otherwise, they loved it. They both love it.
That's a good reason to be sad.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to track for us because it was on when they were infants a lot. But in terms of official viewings of it, probably both when they were 5. I would say that was probably when we first sat down and was like, okay, let's really watch the movie together. But getting into the episode for tonight, I want to say something that I'm excited about is on our Blade Runner show, Shoulder of Orion, the Blade Runner podcast, available on all fine podcast platforms anywhere. A 5-star rating, we get to talk about this stuff all. We get to talk about this stuff all the time, right? Because Blade Runner is famously like the ne plus ultra of movies that have different editions released in it. The special edition of Aliens, though, is a glimpse into that for Alien, right? Because this was something that had nothing to do with the quadrilogy box set, right? When we got all the other editions that we know and love. This was something that predated that and went through multiple iterations, between the television broadcast, the additional censored footage that was added for that, the home video release, and then the Laserdisc release, which of course is what we're going to be talking about today, is the actual canonical special edition of the film, which was assembled with direct input from James Cameron as what he originally had wanted before Fox put a lot of stuff on the chopping block. So what we're seeing with the special edition is an accurate glimpse into like the actual definitive version of the film, according to James Cameron. And that presents a really interesting conundrum, right? This is not the assembly cut of Alien 3. This is something where the movie that James Cameron wanted to make was not allowed to be made by the studio. And then he got to go back after, more success and get his way with it. So it is, at least as far as he's concerned, a definitive document. So I think that makes it even more interesting that some of those of us who like the theatrical more, we like something that he didn't really quite intend to come out the way that it did. Anyway, but yeah, that's there's a lot to talk about tonight.
When you look at the quadrilogy, you have James Cameron having his special moment at the beginning saying, this is the version that I wanted. And then you go to the special edition of Alien Resurrection, and here's Jean-Pierre Jeunet saying, I don't want this version. I want you to watch the theatrical version. And then in between, you have Ridley Scott saying, it was fun. I did it. No big deal. And of course, then there's Alien 3, which is the big, this isn't really anyone's quite, I don't know. Fascinating. But Blade Runner, just for a second, because I don't get to go on that show.
You could feel like to.
You've never invited me.
Well, you're formally invited.
Okay. I did it. I wheedled it. I swear, you almost have to sit somebody down and force them to watch 3 different versions of Blade Runner in a row before they can ever say whether they like it or understand it. Of the 5 or 6 versions that exist. It just, you show them one and say, hold it, don't tell me yet. You got to watch the whole thing again with a voiceover this time or whatever. Anyway, but this is different, isn't it? Aliens, we all have opinions about the theatrical versus the special edition, but the special edition is a compliment. It's adding additional stuff. It's not taking away anything, and it doesn't significantly change the meaning of the movie. So it's kind of a fun thing. We can talk about this, but in the end, there's no wrong answer, right?
Or is there? We'll find out tonight on Perfect Organism.
That leads into the big question is, when did everyone see it and what was their reaction to it? Because again, for me, and I will get into this later, but I was a kid. And then I didn't see it until years later. And to actually verify that what I saw on TV is actually what I saw on TV, because it disappeared for years. So I'm curious what everyone's stories is.
Well, so
mine is the same as yours. The first time I saw Aliens was the TV broadcast. And so when we rented it numerous times, like sometimes once a week, we were my brother and I were so confused the first time because we had remembered more than any other scene. We remembered the oh my God, I'm blanking.
The sentry guns?
The sentry guns, yes.
Me too, yeah.
And we were like, we remember this scene with all the guns, and it wasn't there. So I remember going on eBay when that first came out and buying like somebody's like a VHS copy for, I don't know how, like $30-something of the special edition. And then the quadrilogy came out like shortly after that. But those like early 90 years were like, wondering what happened. It was a confusing time, but I loved any extra I could get, any extra footage.
I think the TV version only had the sentry guns as the added bit, and then you had all the fun TV edits, like how do we have this chicken outfit? But Patrick has a finger up. I think that he has
I do have a finger up. It also had the Ripley finding out about her daughter.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But those are the only two. The only two things. All the Hadley's Hope stuff wasn't on it.
Yeah, I probably saw. So like when I was in grade school and I was absorbing like the Kenner figures were out, and as I've talked about, just being introduced to the whole series as a kid, I saw the theatrical cut of Aliens first. Like that was after my buddy Chris and I, like, we watched Alien, and then I wanted to see the next one. So we watched Aliens, and then it was like, I don't know, I was at like a Walmart back in the day or something like that, and the VHS was there, and I was like, oh, I want to buy that. I think my dad let me buy it, but I didn't know until like I got home that it was the special edition. I was like, oh, special edition, cool. So then I watched it and obviously got to see all the added scenes, and Ripley finding out about her daughter, the sentry guns, and everything, and for me, it was just so much more, because I was so deep, like threaded into the storyline and like the Weyland-Yutani, and like wanting to know so much of that, just more. I wanted so much more. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like Ripley had a daughter, like you get to see when she's like, how many colonists are there on the planet? And the guy's, 60, 70 families. And she's like, oh my God, Jesus, families. And then it cuts to that, and it goes to that scene and then you meet like Newt's family and they're going out. And like, that was just so much more powerful for me when I saw it. And that's what brought me to love it. But that's how I kind of first saw it. And then I would like only watch the special edition. If I ever was like, I don't know, watching my friends and it was a theatrical, I'd like feel bummed out inside.
So the early Dark Horse comics that were a direct sequel to Aliens, the further adventures of Newt and Hicks in particular, they showed Newt's family, the Jordans, finding the derelict. And so I had assumed that they had access to the special edition years earlier. But it gets weird, but Dark Horse did not use the name Weyland-Yutani for years and years and years. And the theatrical cut of Aliens does not have Weyland-Yutani anywhere in it, except for there's one shot where it's backwards on a window in the background. So I think they actually got it from the novelization. The Alan Dean Foster novel had those moments in there. But again, no mention of Weyland-Yutani for whatever reason. But those are the early days when it was like detective work. You're trying to figure out each little bit and how everything connects. And I had to bribe a friend of mine who had a Laserdisc player hooked to a VCR to dub me down a copy of it. It took him forever. But I can remember putting it in for the first time and watching it, and just, every little bit that was added was extra gravy. It was so good for me. Although my best friend that I was watching it with, she really had a bad reaction to the name Ellen. So when it became, what's your name? Ellen. That didn't go over well.
See you, Hicks.
Dwayne. It's Dwayne.
Ellen.
Don't be gone long, Ellen.
Don't be gone long, Ellen.
Dwayne.
You bring up something that's really interesting about the timing here, because the ADF novelization, as you're saying, includes all this stuff in it, right? The Dark Horse stuff includes these scenes. And it's because in post-production, a lot of these changes were made really late, close to the shipping date for the movie. So a lot of the confusion, I think, comes from that. And a lot of these weird moments that many of us had as young people. I mean, I think the broadcast that you all are talking about is from 1989 or so, right?
Maybe 88.
88, yeah. It's late 80s. So it's
12.
It's a couple of years before 39. It's a couple of years before the Laserdisc came out, right? So even, I mean, looking back now through the fog of history, it's easy to look at it like, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened. But there wasn't like updates, like there weren't newsletters going up being like, well, in exactly 12 months, we'll see the rest of the footage coming out in the Laserdisc special edition that you probably saw on the CBS broadcast. It was just a time where everything was so nebulous. But I want to say, what?
I said Fox Broadcast.
Fox Broadcast. I don't know what cable is. You're talking, Christian, about your friend having a Laserdisc player hooked up to a VCR And I'm just thinking, this is the most 90s moment. Like, I'm picturing you doing this while you're on rollerblades for some reason. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But for me, it might be the same VHS set that Perry was talking about. The Aliens that I grew up watching was not the special edition. It was whatever version was in the now playing video rental store in downtown Madison, Connecticut, which subsequently was seized by the FBI because it was in cahoots with the mafia apparently. But they had some great horror movies, and they were very nice about renting it to children. So I got to watch a lot of stuff. It was whatever edition they had, which it feels to me like it was the original VHS home video release. It was pan and scan. The theatrical version of it. So a lot of the time, even today when I'm watching it, I'm kind of like comparing it to that. And we do have that copy of it as well that we watch on an actual VCR that we got in the basement on a CRT television, which is fun. But I really didn't know the special edition was a thing until I was probably 10 or 11 or 12 or something. I don't like, but at some point in some used video store, I got a 3 VHS set of the original trilogy. And it was like copper almost. It had this like beautiful Warrior Xeno on it. It was like bronze kind of copper color. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
This
because there's two versions. You could get the copper version or the silver version, and they were like embossed.
Yes, they were embossed.
Yeah.
They were beautiful.
I remember them at Blockbuster. So they were on the shelf, and you could purchase it because they had the videos that you could purchase, and they had a sci-fi section, and there were all the Alien videos. And I was like, oh,
you're on eBay for that right now.
Yeah, that particular edition was so dope. I was like in love, and it had the widescreen option with the special edition on it for Aliens. So first off, I was like, widescreen, what is that, right?
Yes.
And then in addition to that, I was like, special edition of Aliens that's 17 minutes longer. What the fuck? I truly did not. Your baby's not in earshot anymore.
No.
She's heard worse, Patrick. She's heard worse.
True. She has. She's been watching Aliens. I know. But I feel like it was really, truly revelatory for me. And it was tremendously exciting. So then anyway, I'm watching it and I immediately had a bad reaction to it. And I still to this day don't like the special edition very much because I actually agree for once with, I guess it makes sense it would be broadcast on Fox because they were the ones that owned the rights to it, right? That because they're also a cable company or they were, whatever. Anyway, I feel like it ruined for me the flow of the film. And although Cameron disagrees with that, he thinks that it doesn't do anything bad to the flow. To me, it added too many stumbling blocks. And I still personally feel like the automated turret sections are just, they make me like legitimately laugh when I watch them. So I think for me, because the original theatrical version that I had access to imprinted on me so heavily, it's just, I've never quite shaken that. This is something that we run into with Blade Runner all the time, right? With people who defend the voiceover, like that's the hill they've chosen to die on. And I love that about them because I think that version sounds ridiculous. But again, I didn't fall in love with that edition of Blade Runner. I fell in love after that. And similar to this, like it's the opposite. I fell in love with that original one, and then this other thing came out, and it always felt like I get it, and it's cool being able to see this stuff, but the production value wasn't quite as good. It kind of slows things down. It didn't get me in the heart the same way personally.
I feel that.
Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. Like I feel that with the same way with Star Wars. Whenever all the additions, it like pains me every time I see all of those things because the original version is imprinted fully. Having said that, I think because I did see the sentry guns first, it wasn't as, it wasn't shocking or so different. I'm sort of in between as far as which one I prefer. I think there's a definitive version out there where I would keep some of the scenes and lose some. So I'm sort of in between. I go back and forth between watching the special and the theatrical release. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I just want, like you said, the pacing, I think, of the theatrical definitely outshines the special edition.
And the special edition, when it aired, at least for me on TV, there was commercial break. So you're already breaking up the film. So when they cut back and then there's the sentry guns or whatever, my memory of it isn't jarring because I'm already being taken out of it and then brought back to it. So it flow. I mean, I prefer the theatrical. I don't dislike the special edition, but I do think that the sequence at Wayland or at Hadley's Hope does just stop the movie cold for me. And I know James Cameron reportedly shot all that footage, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels very different. It feels like a TV show. It feels the acting is not as good. The writing isn't as good. It's just less impactful when you see Newt's family and they go into, you know, the derelict and all that, that all of those scenes just felt cheaper. I don't know why. And I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, but that said, I do love the addition of Amanda Ripley, and Ripley sitting at the on that bench with the back projection, and the sentry guns are interesting, but the Hadley's Hope bit is the only part that really pulls me out of the experience.
Hi, sorry I'm late. I've been running behind all morning.
Is there any word about my daughter?
I really think we should worry about the hearing now, because we don't have a lot of time, okay? I read your deposition, and it's great. If you just stick to that, I think we'll be fine. The thing to remember is there are going to be a lot of heavyweights in there. You've got Feds and Interstellar Commerce Commission, Colonial Administration, insurance company guys.
Do you have any news about my daughter?
Well, we did come up with some information. Why don't we sit down?
I guess on the other end of that, Jamie, for me, as I was saying, you know, me just wanting to know more, and maybe this was like my imagination too as a kid, like thinking about these families and like me being naive and innocent at the time. After you see what happens to the Jordans, and then it goes back to cuts back, and then Burke and them like go see Ripley, and they're like, hey, we lost contact with the colony. That was where my brain was like, oh my God, like what could have happened to them? Like everybody's gone, they lost complete contact. And then so when they get on the planet and they're walking through, you know, the hallways with the, you know, the holes of acid and the grating, and you see like the barricade put up, you're just like, for me as a kid back when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, like what happened here? Like, oh my gosh. Cause you see that bits and pieces, you see just a little bit more into that world of those people that lived and, you know, were working on Hadley's Hope and everything like that. And so for me, that's where it just added so much more of, I don't know, that emotion and that feeling into it. And that's really what drives it for me. And so I guess it doesn't, like, I totally get it from a film, you know, putting the movie together standpoint of how that can break up the, just the momentum of what's happening on the screen. But yeah, I mean, again, I just loved it for that.
Well, the Hadley's Hope stuff was actually day one. It was the first stuff that was filmed. And that kind of makes sense because you want the set to be clean for those scenes. And then they went back and redressed it. And Sigourney Weaver was still on another project. So they were getting started before they had her. This is a fight that I've had since the special edition came out of, do you need to see the colony before you see the Marines walk through those halls? And again, my friend Rachel felt very, very strongly that her imagination was better than anything that could be shown. But when I saw the TV version or whatever, and you just see the halls and there's the stuff dripping and hanging and whatnot, I couldn't quite clean it up enough to be a safe and happy place. It always seemed like a haunted house. And so here's a whole sequence of Marines walking through a haunted house until they find a scary monster in a tube and a little girl. So when I saw the footage with Mac McDonald, who I loved from Nightbreed, and I loved him in Red Dwarf as the captain of the ship, and there's like 50 people crammed into the space, and it's well lit, and there's stuff going on, and there's hustle and bustle, and there's kids. It fleshed it out for me in a way that then makes their the Marines moving through that same space so much more impactful. So I absolutely would keep, like Andie was saying, if you could make your own version, I would absolutely keep the Hadley's Hope sequence, but I would cut it just before we meet the Jordans, because that's where I feel like it doesn't quite hold up. The even though they were able to salvage the original derelict model that was sitting in Bob Burns's yard in California, and they were able to dress it and everything, it just doesn't look quite right. And when they go inside the hole in the side of the ship, there's like plastic tubing hanging down.
Yeah, that shot looks so bad.
Yeah.
You know, even though the face hugger tightening on his neck, they did a great job with all of that, but it's a little on the nose. So Do we want to go sequence by sequence through the special edition, or are we just going to kind of jump around? I'm curious.
I'm happy to do whatever. I want to clarify something, that having heard a lot of good points about some stuff I've said before we do that. I also think something that you're saying, though, that a couple of you are talking about that I like a lot, this idea of assembling our own edition of it, that could be a cool conversation, I think, to have also, right? Like, what are the things we would take and things we would leave? So I guess, so I'll propose, let's like try that first a little bit, and then kind of we can go through, more in depth. But before we do, in terms of things that I would keep, there are, when we talk about the special edition, we talk about the big sequences a lot, right? We talk about the Jordans, we talk about Hattie's Hope, we talk about the turrets, we talk about Amanda Ripley, we talk about like the big memorable changes. But there's also a ton of very minor changes in it that I would keep almost all of. The shots of the Sulaco, the shots of the hangar, getting to see more of the technology they were using, more time with the matte paintings and the beautiful sets they had. The beats with Gorman and Burke, like the all these little moments that are just sort of dilated a little bit in the special edition. Those, to me, I'm happy with. So I guess I'll start with this. For me, my special edition would include all of that, but it would not include. It would maybe have Ellen Ripley finding a photograph of Amanda somewhere in a registry, and maybe having a moment of realization, and then cutting past that to keep it a little bit more kind of mysterious and a little bit less. Because for me, that moment is dropped. It really it just becomes like a setup for Newt and for her relationship. Like it has to be justified for some reason, where it doesn't, because their relationship is so beautiful and legitimate on its own. I don't have any issues with the Amanda Ripley content at all. It's just, for me, it feels like it's kind of hammered a little bit on the nose early on and then kind of dropped. So like, I might be okay if we saw like a photograph that she had a daughter and then that was kind of it. But in terms of the colony stuff, Christian, I both agree and disagree with you. I agree with you in that the Jordan stuff should not be there at all. The things before that, I mean, those are sequences that I pause and go back, like the Lidecker stuff we were talking about, earlier, like those sequences with them where the company people are discussing stuff. Like, I love that, seeing them stressed out and sweaty, running around this busy place with kids on bikes and stuff. It's great to see that. I don't want it in the movie though. And the reason for that is precisely what your friend Rachel was talking about, which is for me, there's something more powerful about how drawn into those initial sequences. Like when I see the donut on the desk, I don't want to know the backstory of why there's a donut there, right? I love the fact that there's just a donut on the desk. And like, to me, that one donut says essentially all of the storytelling that you need to know. Because that one little, memento speaks to a whole world that's been lost, So for me, like, although I get a huge kick out of having that content, and I would always love to have it as a special feature to watch and to comb through, it doesn't necessarily inform the movie. It makes the movie feel a little bit more literal to me than I want it to. And I think I agree with Rachel also in that, not because my imagination is great, because it's not, James Cameron, I can assure you, has a better imagination than I do, but that my imagination for me is better than his is for me. Like, my subjective viewing of the movie is the best one that I can have. And for me, when I see that donut, I imagine all these things, these voices that we'll never get to hear again, and it haunts me a lot. So for me, that feels powerful. But yeah, I'm curious for the rest of you, if you want to kind of get, like, what are some moments you would keep and some moments you would get rid of?
Patrick, first of all, every word that you just said in the last 8 minutes that you just, I agree with 100%. My favorites are the little scenes that no one really talks about, the little beats, the character, like the extra little layers of character that we sometimes get. Those are my favorites. And I think those add so much. And going to the donut, I 100% agree, because I remember watching it and seeing that donut and wondering, like, oh my God, like, what happened here? Because who would leave a donut? Who would leave a half-eaten donut unless something was happening immediately right outside that door?
The ultimate sin, right?
Question though, I thought the donuts in the theatrical, the hamsters in the special edition. Isn't the donut?
Oh yeah, the donut is.
Yeah, okay.
But he's saying, I think he's saying, like, that's all we needed.
Oh, I see.
I'm saying the donut that we see in the theatrical.
Got it.
To me,
I was confused for a second, really.
We got donuts. We got hamsters.
But I think so much is conveyed in that donut. Like, not only did these people live and they were working, but something happened immediately that caused that person to leave a half-eaten donut there. So I that donut stuck out for me too. As far as some of the ones that I love, as you said, I love those like extra drawn out scenes. Some of my favorite moments in this film are the quiet moments in between all the action. I love the little moments. Like, one of my favorite is when Ripley's about to go into the complex. She's standing outside. It's raining. I think that's my favorite extra addition because it conveys so much. It conveys the fact that this woman has such PTSD. She knows what's on the other side. She's, going in anyway. This look on her face. And then it also conveys the empathetic side of Hicks. Like, you see him noticing, and everyone else is just doing their thing. And he takes the time, he pauses, he can see on her face that she has been through something. I love that moment. That's one of my faves. But I agree with you on all the things you said.
Good old Dwayne. Good old Dwayne.
That moment at the South Lock, that's the first time that Ripley has set foot on this planet. She was on board the Nostromo when it landed there, but she didn't go outside. And it also encapsulates right there everything that Gorman and Burke promised her about this trip has already not happened. Like, you'll be safe. You won't have to go in, blah, blah, blah. Here she is in the rain. No one's really paying attention to her. They're saying it's secure already, and she knows that it isn't. I can't believe that got chopped. Of all the things, just come on.
It's a great moment.
The Amanda Ripley thing, I'm really, really torn about it because for Sigourney Weaver, that was the moment that defined the character for this entire film, and she was heartbroken that it got taken out. And I love that it's Sigourney's mother in the photo. I love what it's given us in the expanded universe. All of those are good things. I agree with you, Patrick, that it does kind of get dropped, and it does feel a little bit like a connect the dots. She was a mom, maybe she'll be a mom again. But it's beautiful to see it play out in the special edition where she's lost her daughter, she finds a daughter. But if you take that out and you're watching the theatrical cut, Ripley is 100% not a mom. And there's nothing in Alien that ever implies that she was a mother. So when she has this maternal instinct and this easy way with this girl of calming her and getting her to open up and talk, it's almost like it's a revelation for both of them. Like, Newt needs this connection, but Ripley needs this connection and didn't even know it. And as much as I'm the champion of the special edition on this podcast tonight, I think that scene maybe needs to go. I think that it gives the character of Ripley a much more interesting arc if she comes into this situation and discovers that she has this ability.
I agree. It also pains me because it is Sigourney's favorite. So of course she knows Ripley better than anyone. But to me as well, yes, there's that maternal relationship with Newt. But to me, I feel the strongest connection between them is this like shared sense of surviving, and that experience. Only those two know what it's like to be the sole survivor. And I think that's the basis, at least initially, of their connection. And I wish, like you said, and literally Burke drops it in her lap. It is kind of dropped in there. And part of me doesn't think that Ripley, the mother, would have left her daughter in the first Alien. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that would have been something she would have done. I always question that.
It creates when you apply the special edition information back to Alien, then you have to create a whole backstory that gets interesting. It's pretty dystopian that she's, for whatever reason, she has to go on what we assume it's 10 months each way, plus however long they're on Thetis, she's away for a long time, potentially 2.5 to 3 years. So when she says she's going to be home for her daughter's 11th birthday, she left when her daughter was 8. That's hard. But again, the first film, there's nothing in there. There's no moment where she's thinking about her daughter. Now, the moment in Alien Isolation in the video game, when you get to the recording that Ripley leaves for her daughter, that makes it worthwhile. That's an amazing.
I agree.
And it's Sigourney Weaver performing that. So, oh my gosh.
But the question is, in terms of her maternal instinct, I would suggest that you can have that and not be a mother, or you can have a fatherly instinct and not be a father. I'm not a father, but I have a fatherly instinct for sure with my nephews, with children in general. And I feel like it works for Ripley. Maybe, I think to your point, Andie, it is this idea that they've lost everything. Both Newt and Ripley have lost everything. And it's more than this mother-daughter thing. It's we're similar people here. And all we have are each other. And to me, it works in that way. And I think, to Patrick's earlier point, I think it is a little bit on the nose. I don't think we need to find out why Ripley can connect with this little girl.
Right.
I think most humans that are somewhat functional sees a child in distress, they're going to respond. And if there's no one around, they're going to care for that child. You see stories about that. People finding children and taking them in. So I don't think Ripley needs the Amanda backstory. I think it's interesting, but I feel like she towers above that. It's the kind of information that she doesn't need as a character, because she has it all anyways for me. So that's for me one scene that could go. But again, to Patrick and Andie's point, all of the little things I agree as well. I think just the moment when he introduces himself as Dwayne and she introduces herself as Ellen, those just little tiny little magic moments here and there, and the extra time you see, and again the hamster shot, which I remember when I saw. I remember thinking, oh, cute, but it was also really sad too. Like, this poor thing was left and it's been sitting in this cage and I don't remember. I remember when I first saw it, like, because I was a kid, I'm like, oh, there's a hamster there. And of course I was obsessed. I had hamsters myself. So that was the first place that I went to. But before we get further into this, because I want to hear from Perry, did you guys ever have this time or this period where you had seen the television version with the extra and you were like, no, I know that this exists, and you're talking about it with other people and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then finally, years later, you see the special edition and you're like, I'm not crazy. It's real. Like, for years, like, was like, isn't there a scene where these guns are shooting in the hallway? And friends of mine who were adults, they're like, Jaime, I think you're imagining that. I'm like, no, but I really saw them, and they weren't believing me. And then finally, I don't know, 5 years later, however many years later, in 1922, they released a special edition.
The adult people are like, should we send Jaime to the doctor? Yeah. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Dwayne? Like, what?
This is unbelievable. 20 meters in closing. 15.
How many?
Can't tell. Lots. D-gun's down 50%. C-gun's right behind it.
So I'll just say, for me, I'm Christian. I'm just as much as a champion of everything. Like, well, I was gonna say, Jaime, the hamster scene is like the only scene that I would cut, just because.
Oh, my buddy.
I'm so sorry. I love everything. Seconds. I love everything too. For Andie, the same moments, like all of that is so good, so good in the film, and yeah, I just love everything. The hamster scene just didn't do anything for me, and then I almost thought it like detract a little bit before they like find Newt. You're like, oh, then you're kind of already thinking like, oh, well, is it like not an alien then, or something like that? Like, could it be another, like, just, and then I wasn't like as scared when she like jumps out and like Drake almost shoots her. Anyway, so that's the only thing I would potentially cut in my version. But the one piece I wanted to add from what you guys were talking about to the the Amanda Ripley and Ripley finding out about her daughter, part of it is on the other end of it, it gives an insight into like how much more of a D-bag Burke is. And it was something that always kind of stuck with me in like hating that character. I really like Paul Reiser because like he really does a great job at I just love how much you like hate him. And I really like actors in films who like play that role where you just like, God, you're like the worst, meanest person ever, or you like betrayed this person and you hate them so much, and you're like, God, that's so good, because I think it's like hard to do that as a genuine human being, you know. So when someone can pull that off really well acting, it's great, and I love that. And so even when I watch Aliens more and more, like even when I was watching with my little Quinn just these past 2 days, I was like watching Burke a lot more, and I'm like, oh, in the beginning he's like he's like, has anyone explained to you how long you've been gone yet? And when he tells, I know this is in the theatrical, but when he's talking to Ripley and telling her about it, it's almost to me like sounding like he's lying to her, like, oh yeah, you drifted past the star system, you know. It's like, oh, it's lucky we even found you. And it's just like, did they want to find her? Like, did Wayland, you know, did the company really want to find Ripley? And so like maybe it was blind luck that salvage team did. So then he drops the news about her daughter, and then he doesn't really care. He's like, can't we just talk about this like after the meet? You know, like he's more about wanting, you know, to get business done. And which then just builds on top of like what he does then at Hadley's Hope, and like, and so then I just hated him that much more. And so that was just along I love the daughter piece of it and all of that as well. But too, to like for just a tinge more of like that insight into Burke is something why I would definitely do that as well. But yeah.
Also, just as the prop nerd, when he opens up his briefcase and there's the photo of the daughter of Amanda Ripley all grown up, he has paper that has the little, I think it's called continuous paper. You know, it used to be on the dot matrix. It's got the little things on the side you'd have to rip off. So I love the idea that 100 and something years in the future, we're going to go back to, you know. I also am anti-hamster because a couple of reasons.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, it's
some controversy on this episode tonight.
It breaks up though the tension from when they land on the planet, and the whole entry into the complex. You're in this continuous sense of, you know, what's going to happen, and it isn't in the theatrical cut. It isn't interrupted until the facehugger comes at Burke. But in the special edition, we get this little hamster business, and it's kind of funny because Hudson overreacted or whatever. Also, when they come through the door of the room, I can't remember what the term is for it, but they've like overcranked or undercranked the camera to make it look like they're moving faster than they really are. And it's really obvious. There's a sort of like slapstick kind of movement as they come into the room. And they use that technique for the aliens in a couple of shots, and it works just fine. But when you're talking about people, I don't think it's a good look. But I have one piece of trivia. You can't see it in the movie, but in some of the behind-the-scenes Polaroids, the continuity Polaroids they were taking of the various spaces, and I believe it's the room that Vasquez and Hudson go into looking, and where they find the hamsters, you can see the big wheel. So the little kid with the big wheel from earlier in the movie, this is his room. Those are his hamsters.
Holy shit!
Oh, that's cool.
No.
He's dead.
Oh,
He's dead.
He's dead. Oh my!
Big little hamster.
that's
Aw.
crazy.
Wow. I just briefly, I love the idea of the hamster taking Newt's role over, like in this third crazy edition, where it's like they're just trying to save a hamster for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, because the thing's going off, right? The motion tracker,
right?
That's right. Because I forgot about that. So it takes a while. So it's redundant. I absolutely agree. I mean, I think it would be one thing if they went into the room and you see it there, but it's completely redundant.
It goes on and on, and then it happens again, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
There is the bloody handprint when it's the only sign of human casualties. I think everything else we see alien blood in places, but when they go, the motion tracker's going off and they go up to the door, you can see a bloody handprint on the door. Jaime, you actually pointed this out in the commentary track that you guys did, but I'm just adding it here.
Wow,
for
you're
posterity.
good. You're so good.
Look at that.
I am also anti-hamster, so I think we win on
Y'all
this
can
one.
go fuck yourself.
There has to be some special edition shirt out there with a hamster joke on it. Like if that doesn't exist,
Oh,
yet,
there
we
will
have-
be.
We have.
That's
going to
be our Alien Day
shirt.
2022.
This
It's a
fucking
hamster.
hamster joke. It's because it sums up so much about the special edition, right? Because it's like a legitimate sequence that was filmed for it, but it's ridiculous if you take it out of context. It's something. It's funny. It to me, it sums up a lot.
Well, the ridiculous part really is the motion tracker portion of it. It's not so
Right.
much the seeing the hamster; it's the motion tracker. And
right,
then
but it's ridiculous because it
repeating
happens
themselves.
like multiple
Yeah.
times now in the movie,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's just
Which is the metaphor, the hamster wheel. We'll just keep treading through the same.
But
Same
and
stuff.
I think that's that ends up. You see that in movies where it's what they're doing is they're foreshadowing something that's going to happen later. You see that in movies all the time because even though James Cameron is a brilliant writer and Aliens is brilliant, you'll see in other films. They think that the audience needs a foreshadow for you to tell them a story beat later on, when in fact audiences don't. You don't need to foreshadow anything. Just tell your story. So I think it really, really works without that scene.
So in the theatrical cut, we hear the motion tracker. It has that thump, thump, thump of not picking up a signal. And so the first time we hear it actually escalate and everyone's heartbeat goes up with it is for Newt. And then, of course, why... James Cameron was much younger, and this was only his third film. So I think his instinct was that maybe he was training the audience of, okay, this is what it's going to sound like when there's something in front of you.
Mhm.
Oops, it was just a hamster. But it really didn't need that.
And that to me, and then I want Perry to talk because I think I cut him off like 10 minutes ago. So I want to bookmark that I'm coming to you after this. But before that, I want to say, to me, that's an issue with almost all of the added footage, other than those nice little additional panning shots and things in the special edition to me, is that it feels amateurish to me. Part of what is so astounding about Aliens is that it was 32, I think, when he made it, right? Is you have this neophyte director with so few credits under his belt, making this thing that just feels like the most polished, like mature, like intuitive. I mean, like intuitive in the true sense of that word, film, right? Where it's just all of these decisions make instant sense to anyone watching it. It just communicates visually perfectly what it's going for. And then you get the special edition, which basically only adds to it things to say, oh, here's what actually was happening behind this in case you missed it. This is why she cares about Newt so much. This is why you should be nervous because, like, look at these guns are running out of ammo, and we're going to watch this happen for 2 minutes so you don't miss it. Here's the ammo counter again, in case you were wondering how many were left. Oh, we're also going to tell you verbally what we're looking at on the ammo counter, right? Like, this is why you should be upset about the colonies, because look at all these kids that were playing there and now they're gone, right? So, now you don't just have a sneaker for a clue. You can watch them actually interacting with their family. To me, it feels like Cameron giving a lot of just easy outs to the audience. It's like the dumbing down that really doesn't need to happen because the film functions so flawlessly without it. That said, though, and again, I'm not anti-special edition. I'm just opposed to it being definitive for me personally, because those sequences are all really interesting, and they're all there for like valid reasons. It's just they don't need to be there. And the hamster, I think, is just a great example of that. It's gratuitous. I mean, Alien is a movie that I've said many times and will say forever. It's literally in my bio on our website. Is a perfect movie to me. And I think that is a perfect film. I think the original release of Alien is something that I would not be able to change anything from. If I were to try to change anything from it, it would be the number of fake out jump scares that happen before we get an actual reveal of the creature. Because to me, there's a couple too many moments where, the facehugger falls down, or where somebody knocks something over, or Jones jumps out at somebody. It happens quite a lot. Of course, it's a convention that goes back to early 20th century film. It's something Hitchcock did incredibly beautifully well. It's not like, having fake out jump scares. I mean, literally, it's called like a cat jump, right? It's like a convention in film. Alien does that quite a lot. With Aliens, I feel like Cameron, by including the hamster, for example, was almost saying, I'm going to, like what Christian was saying, I'm going to telegraph to you that you should be scared. So like, just be scared. Like, here you go. Like, here's something tense. We're going to give it to you. Here's something else that's tense. And the turrets, for me, the automated turrets are the same problem, where it's like, trust me, this is just as intense as you think it is. So let's just like live with it for a while, whereas the movie doesn't need it, because the movie's creating that tension on its own without any additional, handholds. Anyway, Perry, go ahead. What were you going to say an hour ago?
No, well, I have something to add to this, but I was just adding on to that. Christian, you were talking about the speed in how they, there's parts where you can tell they sped it up. And one of the ones I love is when Bishop is doing the knife trick on Hudson, and then like right at the end when he's done, and they like cut to a shot of the whole table, the whole dinner table. You get a like a minute set where everyone's like reacting like really fast, and it's really funny if you watch for that. I always catch that and I laugh, and that's all I wanted to say about that, Patrick. But
you can see Vasquez specifically in that moment because of her bandana. Like it's very clear that she's like bobbing really, really quick in the background.
Yeah. But no, the more and more you talk about it, Patrick, like I'll watch any version of this movie no matter what, and still be satisfied and love it. And I think too, like when I owned the quadrilogy, and was just like, that was something I'd really appreciate about, DVDs at the time. You had the special features and you could watch deleted scenes and things like that, where like I too like would also think these are so perfect for that that sort of feature to have, like with these movies or these box sets or however you want to own them, too, at the time. Because I know, like, as you're saying with Alien and just the sequencing and how the motion and the momentum, as I said before, is going, and you're building up to something. There definitely are those moments in Aliens where sure it can detract from that a little bit. Again, the only piece for me on the sentry gun scene, and again, maybe this is from just because of my imagination as a kid and when I was watching this too, but I just loved that you're getting like an insight into the aliens, like into the like them coming at the guns, and then they stop, and then you hear them like going to the next section or whatever, and Hudson's like freaked out, and you're like, oh man, like this is freaking scary, man. Like these things are actually, you can hear them coming through. Like that was my mindset at the time too, and now I just enjoy it for like Hudson's reactions and like counting down the bullets, and it's a little cheesy and it's fun, but yeah, I mean, like I enjoyed that part too because it was just added a little bit more to that whole sequence before like Ripley goes to lay down with Newt and things like that. But you're just like, man, they are coming. Like, what are these guys going to do when it happens? Like, are they safe? Are they not? Like what's going on? And that's what I really loved about that sequence a lot.
Check it out. I am the ultimate badass.
Yeah. We're going to get into the sentry guns.
Oh, God.
The theatrical version. So they come out of the hive. They're called the dropship. The dropship crashes. They go to Hadley's Hope. And they weld a couple doors shut. And then they have a whole bunch of other little mini adventures. And the aliens are not in the movie. For 15 minutes, there's no aliens. They talk about, well, I won't let it come to that. I'll shoot you. And then all the Burke stuff comes out. But there's no aliens for 15 minutes in the theatrical cut. And then they cut the power. But they never tried to come over. They never, tested the perimeters. So, yes, there are issues with the sentry guns. The very first one for me is we go from cataloging the weapons. Oh, we've only got 50 rounds in the pulse rifles, the one flame unit, it's only half full. But we've got these amazing guns, and they're really going to come in handy. His whole demeanor changes when he delivers that line. It's like, oh, man, could we have done another take where he's hoping that they'll help? And maybe they're going to be good. But it's a little kid in the candy store for that moment. Now, this is where I'm going to take issue with Patrick, Andie, and Jaime doing your commentary track. It's not the same sequence. The sentry gun, there's two distinct moments for the sentry guns. The first sentry gun, it's wall to wall, and the aliens get through. That's the point of that, is that they're coming in huge numbers, and they will do whatever it takes to get through. And then the second sentry gun sequence is saying they've almost made it through, and they pull back, and they're having to think of a new way to get in. So we're given the sense that in this moment, we are safe. For the time being, our defenses have worked, and the point is made that they could just walk in because there's only a couple of rounds left, but the aliens don't know that. So we're seeing the aliens problem solve. We're understanding that they're trying to get to our heroes, so our heroes are not safe. No, we don't see them. We see the recycled exploding alien shot like 4 times, but I truly believe if this had been in the theatrical cut, they would have shot some extra exploding aliens at Stan Winston's shop and thrown them in there. But this is all that they had when they put the thing together later. So I don't know, guys. Come on. I watched the theatrical cut today for the first time in forever, and I just cannot stand that there's no aliens for this whole sequence.
I agree in some ways that the sentry guns set up what the aliens are going to do. I think that the aliens being shot by the sentry guns and then they back off, where they're backing off, they're going silent. And then you see them eventually in the ceiling. It sets that up. I get it. And it works. And I've heard people kind of make fun of the sentry guns before, and I never understood why they were. I'm like, it seemed to make sense to me. But I know that there's some, like, I guess for lack of better terms, plot holes in terms of like, oh, we're low on rounds, but we have all these guns here.
Well, they're not compatible weapons. I mean, the sentry gun, they're legitimately, it's the same to MG42s that were the smart guns in the earlier part of the film. They just, Bapty had given the weapons to the production and they just redressed it.
Oh, I see.
So, I mean, it's a different caliber round.
Got it.
Christian, in our commentary, did we say it was the same? I want to say, I remember saying they just recycled some of the footage, but I guess what did we? I don't even know.
You guys,
you know it better than what we did, apparently.
You took a big dump on the whole thing. You were having a good time with the fact that they're telling us and showing us the countdown. I agree.
How many rounds could there be? Let's find out. Many different ways.
I did always think that was amusing. I actually like the sentry gun, so I don't know. Maybe if I was dumping on it, I don't know. Maybe it was like peer pressure dumping.
I don't even remember what I said. It was like 3 years ago.
It was, yeah. You know what's cool though? The actual footage of the sentry guns was second unit. It was shot by Stan Winston, but this is nerdy, but it was shot on the same day that James Cameron was filming Hudson's big speech in the APC that also got cut out of the film. The knives and sharp sticks speech. So those were happening at the same time, which is kind of cool. Oh, and the computers that they're looking at the countdowns on are straight off the shelf. They were grid case personal computers or portable computers available in the 80s. NASA used them, but it's such a weird looking design that if you look at it now, or if you show it to somebody now, it looks like another piece of weird sci-fi technology. And it looks like the motion tracker, but they didn't take anything off it. It's just that's what those computers looked like.
I want to say just before we move on from the turrets, from the sentries, here's my problem with it. So there sometimes in Aliens, the creatures are treated too disposable for my liking. That's always been one of my main problems with it. Similarly, in Covenant, I don't like that and I think it's intentional in Covenant. I hope it is. I'm putting a lot of stock in that, but who knows? That the aliens that we see in it are stupid and aggressive, and that they use like heuristics to get what they want. By heuristics, what I mean is problem solving that's based on failing many times and then figuring out the right answer. So problem solving based around how cats get, something off the top of a fridge, right? Is they fall 5 times and then they figure out how to do it and then they go around the back. To me, the creature in the first film, which actually I was just having this conversation with the kids yesterday because they were asking me like, which is my favorite? And I was like, it's always going to be the big chap from the first movie, because to me, it embodies exactly what the creature is, which is not a heuristic problem solver. It's something that takes time and thinks and enjoys the process of hunting in some way, right? It's very deliberate with what it does. And I think that by having the sentries screw up the aliens and then having them pitter patter around to the other hallway or whatever's going on, then having them get thwarted there also, and then having them pitter patter back around again. To me, it makes them feel like a bunch of dumb animals that are just, being met with just a ton of bullets and that's it. And then they just sort of give up and they move on. Whereas if you don't have any activity from any xenomorphic entity at all for 15 minutes in the middle of this action movie, That's very frightening to me, and to me feels more appropriate. It feels like they're luring them towards the core, or they're luring them towards the hive, or it feels like they're waiting for them to be in a room with a great ceiling in it that they know they have access to and that they've mapped it out. Right? In the first film, there's a reason why the creature gets Dallas when it does, right? It's because Dallas has walked himself into a trap that he didn't know he had set for himself, right? Which is beautiful. There's a reason why we don't see the full reveal of the creature until Brett gets taken. And the way that it happens is so balletic and haunting. It's because the creature knew that would happen. The creature was watching and observing and ready for him. So to me, that silence is really important. And that silence is really missing from Aliens for a lot of it, which is why it's even though I adore the movie, it's my third favorite of the franchise. To me, the quietness is lacking in some of it. The theatrical edition, I think, preserves more of that, whereas the special edition fills in like even those little vacuums that we got with just too much for me. And that's one of the reasons why I continue to dump on those turrets a little bit.
It's also worth pointing out that the legacy of the Sentry guns is Alien Colonial Marines, it's Aliens Fireteam Elite. The idea of massive waves of aliens and you just shoot them and none of it matters. That is what that led to. Because I think that without that sequence, even the hive battle, it's not a bloodbath where the humans are just mowing down aliens. That you're right. The Sentry gun is the only sequence that we get that kind of carnage, even though it's the same shot 4 times in a row.
In the original Alien, there's the idea of where is it, what's it doing? We don't know. We don't know what it's doing. That's what makes it scary. And I think in Aliens, that veil is pulled back a little bit. Oh, we know what they're doing. We know where they are. And I think not knowing what they're doing makes them scarier. It makes them more of a threat because they could be anywhere. But it also, and I know people point this gun at Aliens all the time in terms of like, oh, James Cameron dumbed them down. They're bugs. I don't think that that's necessarily true. I do think that there is some merit to that. And I think the Sentry guns, even though I understand why they work and why that scene is there, and it works narratively, it also does kind of make them seem more like animals just going to the slaughter. But the original creature, the big chap in Alien, it was unlike any creature we'd ever seen before. It wasn't moving like any creature we had seen before. Whereas in Aliens, they ended up being, a queen, a hive, and her drones. And this is what the drones are doing, and they're out to get more victims or whatever. And so it's a tough one. And I think that, to me, it pulls the mystery from them a little bit and makes them more, oh, okay. And I don't want to feel that way about Giger's creature. But as Patrick said, I mean, I think Aliens is the film I've seen the most. And it's the film that made the most impression on me as a kid and as an adult for sure. I mean, it's informed me the most, even though I love Alien 3 the best. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I'm glad they went with a theatrical cut. I do think it just works more for me and retains the mystery a little bit more.
Harry, what do you think of the Sentry guns?
I really enjoyed that sequence, but Patrick and Jaime, now that you guys put it that way, I'm just like, yeah, touche. I don't know. I agree. I very much agree. Dumbing down the creature a little bit, as much as we dump in the night. As much as I guess as much as it informed me about them like trying to find a way in, you're right, Patrick and Jaime. Like that 15 minutes without aliens too is like can be very scary. I think is how you look at it, and especially from what we got from Alien and just building off of that creature was horrifying. And I know it gets back to that more closely in Alien 3, which I love as well. But yeah, I guess, I was going to say it's kind of cool to me, at least like how I grew up, the way that they released it. And you're able to like treasure hunt a little bit. And I don't know, Patrick, were you saying this earlier about like you're kind of like putting the puzzle pieces together? You're like, oh, there's this special edition now, or there's this deleted scene. And you're like, as kids growing up with these things, and I'm playing with the action figures, and and the Kenner figures and all that. And then I'm like, oh, there's more to the story, and you're finding it. And that was like really cool in those moments. And I know this about myself, like I'm like big nostalgia guy. And so like anything that reminds me of that or takes me back there is something that I just love, as I'm sure a lot of you guys do too. But I just will like love that so much just for that. And so maybe it's a little bit of that for me in that moment, but I'm just so thankful that I guess that it Fox and Cameron and it all kind of happened that way, because it gave us that experience of like finding out more and watching these scenes. But now the more and more Patrick and Jaime, you guys talk about it, I'm just like, I'm not flipping sides here, but I'm just like, I agree. I'm just like, the theatrical cut is that way for a reason, or was cut that way for a reason. And, for good or bad, or just like for what it offers or what it doesn't offer, I think it's still a great depiction of just the story in general.
Here's the thing, and I want to take point with myself right now. I prefer the theatrical cut of every single one of the movies. And that's something that I don't think I stop and think about very much. But anytime these conversations come up, like I prefer the theatrical for Alien 3 over the assembly cut, which I know is kind of rare, but I know Jaime feels the same way. I do not care about the director's cut of Alien, particularly. I think it actually adds stuff that doesn't need to be there, although it's cool. And with the special edition also, I just feel like it slows and kind of dumbs the movie down a little bit. The Alien Resurrection special edition, which I don't even remember if that's what it was called or not. I think it's even more laughable than the movie is, especially the ending of it. It's just so ridiculous to me. I think that probably says something about me, though, is the reason I bring it up. And maybe my hubris, but probably more likely than that, my attachment to the forms of the movies that I fell so madly in love with the first time around. Because, and this is even, although Shoulder of Orion is a terrific podcast and you should subscribe to that as well, this is why Alien will always be closer to my heart than Blade Runner even, which is saying a lot because I love Blade Runner so much. It's because I fell so hard for these movies, as I know everybody on this call obviously also did, and everybody who's taking the time to listen to a fucking Alien podcast out there, you also did. These movies imprinted on us so intimately when we were young, for many of us, that any other version of it that we come across feels almost anathema. It's like something we have to get used to. So for those of you who fell in love with the special edition first, like I would have such a hard time jettisoning that material and being like, oh no, the definitive is the theatrical that James Cameron, who is a genius, did not want to have put out. Like it would be really hard for me to get to that point. But because the theatrical is what I fell in love with, it's what I'm still in love with. And everything feels superfluous. It feels like we don't need all this stuff. So I guess I'm bringing that up just because I think it probably says something about where a lot of my judgments are coming from on it. And that is to say that ultimately this is such a subjective conversation, obviously, but especially with something like editions of a movie like this, like it is, we will always have differing opinions on it. And I guess I'm saying that because I want to make it clear that I'm not trying to enforce my opinions on anybody else here or listening to it. If you love the special edition and you love the Sentry guns and you love the Jordans and the Wildcats, so if you love that stuff, then good for you. Love the fuck out of it because that's your job as a nerd. Like, love it if it's for you. But it's just for me that this edition of the movie has never felt as appropriate or as true to the vision, interestingly enough, that Cameron had as his original theatrical release did. And it's just last thing I'll say about it is it's interesting because we're basically giving Fox the credit for this, right? Cameron did not have final cut privileges on this. Fox made a lot of editorial decisions late in post-production, as we mentioned, late enough that things got into the wrong licensing scripts, right? And Cameron basically had to sit back and just let it happen. And Fox is a company that we spend a lot of time crapping on this podcast for many creative missteps along the way in the handling of this franchise, for better or for worse. But this is, I think, a testament to they did know what they were doing, in my opinion, with this movie. Like the decisions that they made late in the game on it were the right decisions for the material. So, Fox deserves more credit sometimes than I think we give them.
Question. Why is it called special edition and not the director's cut?
That's what James Cameron wanted it called. I'm really not
okay.
sure.
Okay, interesting. I'll disagree in one sense, though, that I that scene of the egg morphing in Alien, I love that scene. I think it adds so much. I get the argument even Ridley Scott said it just didn't work with pacing. I've never seen anything like that in a movie before, and I think it works beautifully in where the place where they put it in the director's cut or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think the film absolutely works without it as well, but there's no, I mean, the only time they ever tried to recreate a scene like that was in Resurrection when Ripley comes face to face with herself, essentially. But I love that scene in the director's cut, and I think it just makes Alien even more crazy and otherworldly and terrifying. But I do prefer the theatrical cuts, and not because for me, like, oh, those are the cuts that I've seen, but I think it's just they just seem to work in a tighter. They just flow better for me. But I think we would be having obviously a different conversation if they had released these special editions or director's cut, and that's ones we have seen. We would love them. We wouldn't think anything, but they didn't, and so we have these differing versions. But one thing I will say, I'm so glad that James Cameron released these and made everything available, not like Lucas, who was like, here's the new edition, you're not getting the other one. Yes. I'm sorry. Like, talk about a fuck you to fans. Like, come on, man, you gotta honor both sides here. Like, do what you want to do, but also honor that people fell in love with a different version of your film. So in that sense, like, props to James Cameron and Ridley Scott and everyone involved, and even Fox for giving us the assembly for Alien 3 and the theatrical edition and saying, hey, all of these can exist at once, as opposed to trying to retcon history and say, oh no, only this one exists.
For my money, it's theatrical cut of Alien, special edition of Aliens, assembly cut of Alien 3 by far.
Wow, we're getting to that.
What fourth film? Yeah. What? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, agreed.
Directed by, I believe you said earlier tonight, Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Do you say Jeunet?
Jeunet.
I don't know. We'll say Jeunet because the movie sucks.
That's funny. I'm pretty sure that Fox only mandated the runtime. I think it was Cameron who made the cuts.
Yeah.
Because he was very hands-on with the whole deal.
Actually, I think Gail made most of the cuts, or advised James to make most of the cuts. She was the one who got rid of the Hadley's Hope, and he really wanted to hold on to it. And she's like, if we're cutting, they had to make certain cuts here and there. And that whole segment made the most sense without losing some of the other things. So I think she ultimately made the decisions, and he just kind of agreed with it. But I don't think he wanted to lose any of it.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Actually, just briefly, trivia: the sequence where they have her gun standing in for Vasquez's gun in the tunnel actually is her holding a gun to James Cameron's head in the editing booth, forcing him to get rid of that sequence. That's a joke. That's not real.
The last two bits that we haven't talked about are Hudson's big speech in the APC, and then the talking about the well, ant hives have a queen. I would cut both of those. I would cut both of those. I am just simply the fact that Hicks goes from being asleep to awake to asleep again while Hudson's talking, and it doesn't sound. I mean, I love the bravado, obviously, with Hudson, and I think that it's really indicative of who his character is. But it feels like he's reading someone else's words. It doesn't feel like he's coming up with it off the cuff. What do you guys think?
I love that scene exists because it's just pure like Bill Paxton joy. But I totally agree with you. Within the framework of the film, it just stands out. But I mean, if I could just watch it like solo and just get a kick out of it. But I agree. And I agree with the ant hive too. It's too on the nose. We don't need it. We don't need you to explain what's coming up. It's too much of a foreshadow of getting the queen. So I agree on both, but I mean, any extra Bill Paxton to me is just a little, it's like a little gift that randomly I could just watch.
Fate is a badass art. You do not want to fuck with me. Check it out. Hey, Ripley, don't worry. Me and my squad of ultimate badasses will protect you.
Just super quick, Perry. Before that, just about extra Bill Paxton, his sequence on the dropship that Christian was talking about, right? Getting more of moments like that to me makes a special edition a treat every time. Perry, go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I love all the Bill Paxton moments. That's why too, just the sentry gun scene, just his little dialogue bits are funny. And great, but yeah, I love that. Sharp sticks, knives, like trying to tell Ripley it's hilarious. But yeah, and the hive scene too, or them talking about it. Bill Paxton again, just like his and the banter with Vasquez about it is so funny to me. I love those scenes too, standalone. But yeah, I get, now that we've talked about this through and through, I would have to say take those out in my version as well.
Yeah,
pretty slim.
I love Paxton, but I think the addition of those scenes kind of push him over the top. He's already over the top. What's in the theatrical? Like, we get it. We get him. We get his bravado, we get his arrogance, and then he turns into this like weepy little 12-year-old boy, midway through the film because he's terrified. And I think those things just kind of push him over. He gets, it's almost belligerence. So I think pairing him, he has so much screen time and such presence. Pairing him back a little bit does his character just some good. But I could watch those things. I mean, I could watch Bill Paxton's just amazing in everything he's in. And he's just a delight to see on screen. He eats up every moment of screen time. So those scenes are great by themselves for sure.
And I want to make a closing argument as we come to the end in favor of the special edition, actually, which is not necessarily that I prefer it, but how grateful I am that we have it. Because Aliens is something that we can all agree is just a legendary moment in film history. It is something where all of these brilliant people, both behind and in front of the camera, came together to make something astonishing, right? Something that felt impossible and continues to feel impossible to this day. Every time I watch it for hundreds and hundreds of times now, I'm still on the edge of my seat, right? It's an impossible thing to create. And the special edition gives us a glimpse into more of that, right? It gives us more time with those sets. It gives us more time with those actors, many of whom are no longer with us. It gives us more time inside Cameron's head and Heard's head and, everybody else's head. It gives us more of a glimpse into a moment in history that deserves to be preserved, that needs to be preserved. And for so many great films, and Aliens is a great film, obviously, for so many great films, we don't have that, right? Like when you watch the definitive cut of Citizen Kane, there's not like that much more we have access to because that film's degraded and most of it's in the movie. When you watch the ultimate cut of many other movies, right? Like basically we're seeing just the restored footage of the movie that we all know. So when you get a collector's edition that comes out, it's like the movie that you already know. It just looks a little better and has more special features with it. But the special edition is different. The special edition is a fundamentally longer, more in-depth film that is created by the people who made the original movie from the same time period. They didn't go back and change it. It was all from that moment in history in the mid-1980s. So for that, I think it's an invaluable document. And while I might not personally prefer it, I am just beyond thankful to my lucky stars that it exists. I truly am. I think it's a treasure to have.
There, so you agree with me. That's awesome.
We dump it.
Thank you.
Patrick, I'm curious, what do your boys prefer?
Oh, the theatrical.
Okay.
Because it's
do they even know?
Oh,
because they've never seen the special. They've seen parts of it because I've shown them some of the differences. But it's like the other thing is
we don't show that in our house.
Yeah, it's forbidden. How dare you? Get out! It's one of those things where like the movie just works so beautifully for a kid, right? Like I was saying before, it's a universal film language, right? That adding all the extra stuff into it and slowing it down more, I think it pushes it to the point where like I could see them getting more bored with it. We haven't tested it. Maybe I'll sit down and watch the whole thing with them this weekend and see what they think about it. And I'll report back. Thank you.
Before we close, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'll definitely show Quinn when she's old enough. I think obviously all the theatrical cuts first, because I was just thinking about that. I watch him so much. I'm like, God, I'll have to get to a point where I'm like, where I, just don't. I'm like, all right, I gotta just watch the theatricals now, or else she's probably gonna catch glimpses of scenes or something, just to make sure. Because I feel like I'd want her to have that feeling of like seeing the special edition or whatnot, and just seeing these extra scenes, and then having her own imagination go and find, and just kind of how I had, not to control that aspect of it, but it'd be cool, I think, to do that with her. It just, Patrick, you made me think of that talking about your kids.
Otherwise, she's going to wonder, what? I know there's a scene with guns. I remember hearing it when I was a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're like, what? Perry's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
5 years
Crazy.
later. I'm sorry, I lied. Santa's not real either. I'm curious, before we close the show, when about the time the theatrical was, or not the theatrical, but that special edition or version of it was on TV, I know for me, the props and a lot of things were touring the country. They came to I think it was the Field Museum or the Museum of Science and Industry. There was a whole movie section. So they had the shark from Jaws 4 with its head moving and it was spinning around. And they had all Master of the Universe like prosthetics, and then they had the puppets that they used, the miniature puppets from Aliens, the power loader and photos and props from Aliens. I'm curious, Andie and Christian, if those made their way to where you guys were when you were a kid.
No,
they did. I didn't know about it.
Yeah, my dad took me, and I was just like,
"What was this? It was a touring exhibit."
Yeah, it was like the magic of the movies or something like that. So it had a whole like wing of the museum with props from movies of the 80s. It was just amazing.
The closest I got was like Planet Hollywood. Like I remember.
Oh, really?
I remember requesting the seat next to the Aliens props in Planet Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
I did that. I've been to that Planet Hollywood too.
I grew up
in Newark. In Newark. In the Newark airport.
Nobody goes to Newark.
When I was growing up in Gettysburg, we were close enough to DC that was kind of our city that we'd go to. And the Smithsonian one time had the set from MASH of what they call it, the swamp, where Hawkeye lived. Anyway, and they had that recreated in the Smithsonian. And so that was like my one bit of connection to, movie or TV magic, was I got to see that. There were no xenomorphs involved, though. Although Tom Skerritt was in the movie version of MASH.
I've never seen that.
You don't have to. It's really not. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not a Roger Altman.
Remember when I was a kid that MASH would come on, like we'd be watching whatever show, and then you'd hear that or whatever the music was, and like turn the channel, because I was with a bunch of other kids because we hated it. Now MASH brings me comfort.
Yeah.
Because I'm so old, Patrick.
I love
watching. Sorry, Christian. Anyone watch Hogan's Heroes? Great show. I used to watch that all the time. All right.
I just wanted to say something that's interesting about the special edition is that it wasn't like James Cameron wanted to just throw any old thing in it, because the Burke cocoon scene isn't in the film. That he you know what I mean? Like that's a moment that I think that if it were 30 years later, like Ridley Scott, like, oh yeah, let's just throw that thing with Dallas in there. That stupid scene that nobody likes, I'll throw it in there. The cocoon scene. This is aimed at Jamie, and he's not picking up on it. I cannot stand the Dallas cocoon scene because it completely slows down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's completely out of place.
See, for me, in my mind, it just really, it just takes me deeper into this horror of this creature, because you're seeing Dallas and Brett, and you don't really understand what's happening to them. I mean, I don't hear the term egg morphing until years later. So something is happening they're being transformed. So for me, when I saw that as a teenager, I was horrified. And again, I didn't see it until much later when they officially released it. But yeah, it it really made an impression upon me. And I would love Alien to get back to those roots, those horror roots. And I actually think as we continue on our discussion about the life cycle with Covenant, which will be our next episode, it gets into that horror aspect, that body, what do you call it? Body horror? What's it called? Body, yeah. That Aliens moved away from, and Alien 3, for all intents and purposes, moved away from it as well. And it became more psychological or more action oriented. But I just love that cocoon sequence. It sticks in me in a way that very few other things do in the series.
Okay, so what's everybody's favorite extra scene? What if you could only add one? What would be the one that you would add? What's the fave?
To the actual assembled cut of the movie, not just like something I would keep, something that I would put into the theatrical
what would
edition.
And what would you put in? Yes.
For me, the fucking Sentry guns, I'll tell you that
much. For me, it would have to be just Hadley's Hope before we see the Jordans go off in their Wildcatter. Just the Hadley's Hope sequence is the thing that I would keep. I could lose all the rest.
For me, it would be Ripley and Hicks introducing themselves with their first name.
Dwayne. For me, it would be without question Ripley hesitating before she goes inside. I think in the rain. I think that's a very powerful moment. I agree with what Andie and others said about it tonight. I think it adds a lot of really good character beats, and it feels like it fits to me.
Perito.
Yeah, this is so hard for me. I want to say Hadley's Hope.
The hamster.
The
hamster. Somebody's got to advocate for the hamster.
No, little Joe. Little working Joe. The first
Hadley.
Working Joe.
Can the hamster also be foreshadowing of them crawling through the tunnels later, or through the venting later? So I think the T-shirt that we make is the hamster.
Yes.
But it's
we need to, Patrick.
We Photoshop Newt going through the hamster tunnel. I don't know. It's an idea. But no, I think I would have to keep the Ripley hesitation too. I would love to keep Hadley's Hope. That would be, I guess, it would be a toss up between those two. But just that is very powerful.
All right, hold on. The Hadley's Hope scene, though, as much as I love it, it's a completely different set of actors. It does feel like a different piece. I don't think it feels amateurish, but I agree it's a different piece. So, pulse rifle to my head, it is the scene of Ripley hesitating outside that door. That should be in the movie. It's not only a great moment for Ripley, our main character, but it's another very subtle moment with her and Hicks. And how could that not benefit the movie? That's a great scene.
And they have dialogue, right? They have a moment where they actually talk to each other in that. And there are relatively few moments like that in the movie, and they're all so powerful. And that fits. That's a powerful exchange where he asks if she's okay. That moment, to me, rocks. I want to do quick. Xander, our silent partner who's helping in the background with stuff, is saying he would also do a vote for the Ripley and Hicks scene. So yeah, I think that clearly those moments are important. Hey, before we quit tonight, we have patrons out the wazoo, and I want to make sure we read a couple names. Is that cool, Jaime? Just in the last few weeks, we have a few new ones. I'll go ahead and read them out. We have Reda Alawach. Oh, I definitely did not say that right. Alawach. Reda, let me know how to pronounce your name, and I'll say it right in the next episode. We have, I should have probably read these through the first time. Kazes Varnelis. If I'm saying that wrong, let me know. It's an awesome name. I hope I'm not mispronouncing it. It looks like it's Kazes or Kazes Varnelis. We have DR, which I think is for David Roberts. We have Eric Miller. We have Dwayne Namor King. And we got Dr. Robin Bunce, who is also a contributing host on Shoulder of Orion now. So thank you for also helping out with the shows. And a quick example and plug for how we use this stuff. We have another contributing host who recently joined Shoulder of Orion, who had no recording equipment, and we were able to supply him with a nice home recording setup, at a reasonable cost, and he was able to get reimbursed for it. And he also needed to get review materials to talk about on a recent episode. We were able to reimburse, $15 for those as well. So that money that comes in is used on sometimes a weekly basis for these productions. Everybody here tonight is on actual recording equipment, and you can probably hear that in the quality of the broadcast. And that recording equipment has been, for the most part, entirely funded by help from all of you out there supporting the shows. So it's because of you that the shows sound good, And it's because of you that we keep coming back to shit on those fucking sentry guns week in, week out.
I knew it. I knew I was going to let it go.
Dwayne.
So thank you everyone for listening. We're going to be taking a break. This is going to be our last episode until January 4th. We're going to come back with more Covenant coverage. We're going to go off into a series on the Beast itself and its legacy and its influence in cinema and creature features and so much more as we step into 2022 and the 30th anniversary of Alien 3, which we will cover quite extensively. So have a great holiday, everyone, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Guys.
For more on Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast, please visit perfectorganism.com. Perfect Organism is available for listen or download through Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, and Spotify. If you'd like to support the show, please visit perfectorganism.com/support. Thank you.